And something I brought up the last time that I found absolutely fascinating was when Christ showed up in the world, there was this litany of symbolic ironies. Like this is probably the best thing about it, because I think all this religion stuff is very heavy. You're like talking about God, you're like, it's all very serious, the end of the world, Jesus, morality, there's all very, very serious stuff. But when you actually, if you could zoom out and look at the kind of splatter of history as it went through, like what happened in Rome with Jesus it's almost hilarious. It's like a joke of some sort, it's like a trick being played on people. As I've said, I was saying to you last time that the cross is the ultimate symbol of Roman power. You stick the cross and you stick up your enemies on the cross, and it's like, we've defeated you, we've completely dominated you. And then the irony of them ending up worshiping a guy on a fucking cross, of all things, like it's just mind-blowing what's going on there. And I think the big thing that's irking me is it seems like that's maybe the opening of that irony is leading to this big 2,000-year historical process. And it feels now, and how much can we trust my feelings, that there's a kind of closing or a new irony showing up. The idea of this is kind of crude, and I'm not trying to push it too hard, but the idea that it was the materialistic down-to-earth process of science that in some sense saved the world, if you will, as opposed to the salvation into heaven and stuff like this. And the idea that we're going to create God by creating the artificial intelligence and stuff like this, instead of actually God coming down and saving us. Like, we're going to make him. It's very, very ironic set of things. It's almost like they're playing on the Christian myth itself. And this has always kind of set my mind ablaze. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, and where your head is at.
I think so. But I mean, there are many thoughts to have. First of all, it's important to understand that one of the parts, like, if you can understand kind of the story of Christ, like you said, almost like it's like it opens up a space. It opened up a space for certain things to happen. Like it's the beginning of a story, or it's the setup of a pattern of a story, which the seeds and then the fruits kind of come in the 2,000 years that we've experienced. And one of the aspects that is there, a part of the Christian story, is the story of Antichrist. So in the story of Christianity, there's to theorize the idea that part of the story is also its opposite, or that there's a part of the Christian story which is also its own betrayal. And it's there in the story of Christ himself. We always have to remember that Christ chose Judas as one of his disciples, knowing, because it's even shown in the story that he knows, right? Christ knows that Judas is going to betray him. You see that at the Last Supper, where Christ basically says, okay, now's the time. It's like Christ basically gives permission to Antichrist. He's like saying, okay, now's the time to do your thing. Now go out and betray me. But what's important is to understand that this seems to be part of something like the non-duality of the Christian story, which is that Christianity set up a space in which there's a proposition which contains also its anti-proposition and is leading towards a final resolution, right? Where all of this, I mean, I don't want to talk in Hegelian terms. That's not my point, but rather that it's kind of like the fullness of the story. And it's also part of the idea of Christ going into his own death and going into his own mockery and going into all of these types of things, which are part of his story. But in that mockery, the importance of the irony is to show that there's something else going on in the mockery. And that's the kingship, which is appearing kind of secretly in a weird upside down way, where as Christ is being mocked, he's being mocked as king. As he's being put on the cross, they have put a sign above his head saying that he's king. And so there's a way in which it's going to the end of the story, right? Going all the way into death, but transforming that death into something else, into glory, basically. And so you could say that if you can understand that that's part of the Christian story, right? In the small story where it's Christ being betrayed, going into death and manifesting glory in his death, and then the giant story, which is that Christianity seems to have in its own process something like Antichrist, and that this will lead to, I mean, now we're not talking about historical things anymore. We're talking about a pattern that hasn't completely resolved itself. So it's all imagistic for now, but it's like Antichrist comes and Christianity seems to be even seduced into Antichrist. And then Christ returns and basically solves the puzzle.